Hey everyone, had a really cool conversation with a friend of mine today. Actually, we were sort of exchanging video messages. It was a bit of an odd conversation, but it was fun. He was commenting on a previous post that I'd made about visions pulling you forward and having your past pull you backwards, and we were having an interesting conversation about opposing forces and everything, and he is really in on fear right now, and he's exploring the role that fear plays in holding people back in terms of achieving success. And I think for now, as we're piecing this together, I think we might have slightly different take on success. But for full disclosure, my buddy's way more successful than I am, particularly, certainly in a lot of aspects of life, notably business, and he's running a very, very successful business that he's built himself. So you have to put that in context when I say there's things that I agree or disagree. I would say that this is a guy who's done more to conquer his own fears, certainly, than I have. So it's not that I disagree per se, but he's sort of the mind, I'll summarize it and I'll do a bad job, he can comment below, but essentially his working theory so far is that the fear is what grounds you, and the fear is what stops you from achieving what you want to achieve. And I think that that's true to an extent, but I also am someone who thinks that fear can be incredibly valuable. Maybe it's the risk professional in me, but what I mentioned to him was I actually think that everybody, whether consciously or unconsciously, is making a bit of a risk-reward decision. When you want something more of life, you are deciding what needs to happen to go there, and your mind instinctively identifies the risks associated with that. And if the risks are too close to or are greater than the rewards, then I think that instinctively we don't do it. It's kind of like there's something to eat out there, but there's a giant saber-toothed tiger that it's also going to eat me. Risk, reward, bad deal, stay in the cave. I know that analogy kind of gets beat to death, but I really do think that when you get into our inner working of our brain, that subconscious is very real. So I think that fear is a filter that makes risks seem bigger than they are and causes us to underestimate the potential reward in most circumstances. And I do think, so we do agree that fear is critical as an impediment to success. You have to get past that in order to take action and to move forward in all aspects, whether that's overcoming fear of rejection by asking someone out, overcoming the fear of rejection and asking for a raise or a promotion, overcoming the fear of putting your face on a video on YouTube. Those things are very real. But the lifestyle evolution isn't about, one of the first videos I said is this isn't about chasing Lambos and mansions. This is about incrementally improving and leveling up all facets of your life. And for me, again, as maybe a risk professional, I think that risk reward math is important. And I think that fear is a healthy check to make sure that you're not doing something stupid. Because particularly if you're someone who follows people on Instagram or on YouTube, and you look at some of these very, very successful people who advocate conquering fear and just going all in, however you want to define that, we have a bit of a survivorship bias. The people who went all in and got blown apart aren't doing videos. Yes, some of those people have had those type of meltdowns and they've bounced back. So that resiliency conversation is something completely different. But there are a lot of people who go all in, who risk it all, and it costs them everything. It costs them relationships, it costs them jobs, it costs them financial security, it's cost them their health. And look, I'm not advocating being afraid, not at all. But I am advocating not vilifying fear. Fear is just another emotion. It is just another signal that our body has to process. And we need to process it. We don't need to vilify it. We don't need to deify it. We just need to be aware of it, and we need to listen to it, and we need to understand what kind of a filter is fear adding to my math on whether whatever I'm planning on doing, is it worth the risk? Is the reward worth the risk? And, Tim Ferriss talks a lot about breaking down your fears, about going, what are you actually afraid of? What is actually the worst case scenario? And what's going to happen? What's the risk? And you might do that math and realize that the risks are totally worth it, or that a lot of your fears are unfounded. But don't be reckless. Don't assume that. Do the work, because you may actually do the math and go, you know what? Now is not the time to do this. I don't have the war chest to safeguard my family's financial future if I go all in now and make this mistake. Having this bold conversation with my boss now might not be the right time. Maybe a week from now, or maybe there's a circumstance in your life. It isn't always about taking risks. And I just want to make sure that when we have this conversation about fear, we're not vilifying it. As I said, just like excitement needs to be tempered, just like, ambition, just like lust, just like everything, it has its place, but you have to control it. And you have to be able to recognize, why am I feeling this thing right now? And is this helping me? Is this moving me closer towards where I want to be? Is this helping me become the person that I want to become? So get comfortable with fear. Don't let it rule you, just like you shouldn't let any emotion rule you. But don't go on a mission, a seek and destroy mission for fear, because I really do think that fear stops us from doing some pretty epically stupid things sometimes. And the world is full of people who have done epically stupid things, who have gambled big and been burned. I would probably guess, it is a total guesstimate, that the number of people who gambled big and were burned is the same, if not greater, than the people who gambled and won. It's those people who make tactical gambles, who have cut through the noise of fear and have moved forward despite of it, not blindly ignoring it. So what are you afraid of? I know what I'm afraid of. There's a lot of things that I'm afraid of. I wrote down a lot of my fears, and I'll put it out there. There's a lot of things that I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of letting my family down. I'm afraid of not being able to provide for them financially. I'm afraid of always being someone who's all talk and no action, which is ironic. It's the opposite. I'm afraid that my body's going to break and that I'm not going to be able to do the things that I want to do, notably my back. I'm afraid that I may not be the best example that I can be for my kids. But those fears, they're not paralyzing me. They're just things that I've identified that I would rather not have happen. And then what do I need to do to minimize the possibility of that happening? We all have a laundry list of fears. Don't be ashamed of them, but don't be paralyzed by them. Understand it, just like everything else. Break it down, understand it, use it to your advantage. It's just another data point. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I hope you've recognized something that you might be afraid of and you are working towards moving past that. Have an absolutely great night. It's a lovely, rainy, dark evening here. I love it. I like the rain. It's not snow right now. Never gonna get this GT Snow Racer out of the garage and out on the ski hill, but soon enough we will. Have a wonderful night. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.